that. Let's get it. Shoot it. Bow, bow, bow. Bow. Shoot it. Okay. It is officially 4:20 to 3:20, 25. 4:21, actually. I am exhausted. But we are going live. 28 seconds in. Time to wake up. Wake up. All right. Get it together. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, here we are in Shaper 3D. I have out a 13-inch large M-lock handrail. Okay. We are going to work on protecting the thumb, or I don't know how people are grabbing it. If they're doing here, going thumb over, however it is you're grabbing it, I don't care. But provide a way to make this less abrasive. Here we go. This in my head knows how complicated that this is actually. It seems really straightforward. It seems like, hey, you would just make a rectangle. You'd come here, press square off the front face. You'd come here, get your rough, doesn't even, you grab this face, and you draw it right through to about here. And we're going to take this, and we're going to come down with it. Yeah, I'll take that. Oh, God, my back. I knew it. I have only sneezed one other time since I sneezed and blew my back. God darn it. It's so painful every time I do. Okay. We do not want to include these very front ones. I think. Oh, well, that's pretty easy. You can see right now how it's going to happen. So because we've got this edge here with this. This is how we're just going to shorten this. We're going to bring this face back to about here, and it's just going to clip over. It's just going to drop on and clip off. So easy. So easy. All right. All right, we're going to go, say, 3 mils past that. I'm lining it up tight right now. But I'm thinking in my head, quick goat thinking, straight out. I'm just going to +3. That's kind of thick, no? We'll round it off here. We'll do something with it. I don't like how wide that is. So we will highlight them both and bring them back 1. I want to bring them back 1.5. All right, there we go. We are back -1.5. Going to come over here. Take another look. I think we are ready for, hopefully, a subtraction. Hopefully I don't have to piecemeal this out, but it's fine if we have to do it that way as well. I don't think subtraction is the way to go about this. I think that's going to mess this up. I think if I want to do subtraction, I need to use something like him. These are the ones I really want. Bear with me for a moment. All right. Did I lose my body? I did. Son of a gun. You son of a gun. My life. I'm the worst at this. Wait. What happened to my body? How come this keeps disappearing? All right, we are at the point of subtraction here. Okay, that's actually exactly what we're looking for. We could leave that in the front, honestly. It's kind of cool. All right, so there we changed it to something I could see here.
We were staying at a charming little inn called the Fisherman's Arm.
4:42. I'm gonna get some ice cream.
Our holiday was delightful. And then I suppose, Doctor, strange things began to happen. They did indeed, Mr. Foreman, they did indeed. Very strange things. One afternoon, we just finished a late tea, I remember, and were sitting outside on the lawn sunning ourselves and enjoying our pipe. Holmes lay back, with his long, thin fingers cast behind his head, a colored fishing boat, bobbing at anchor in the harbor. After a moment or two, he spoke to me. Watson, you're really a splendid companion. I can't think of anyone else who would let me smoke my pipe in silence for half an hour without asking me what I'm thinking about. That's not very surprising, Holmes, after all the years that we've been together. Well, nevertheless, the gift is a rare one, old chap, and I appreciate it. Oh, thank you, Oliver. By the way, since the half hour's up, what have you been thinking about?
48 minutes.
A lack of enterprise of a modern criminal. Audacity and romance seem to have passed forever from the criminal world. Read this note I received this morning, old fellow. See for yourself how low I have sunk. All right, have a look. Mr. Holmes, I am staying in the same inn as yourself, and as I have had a very frightening, I thought perhaps you would help me, please. It's signed Mary Victor. An exciting document, isn't it? written on the notepaper, reeking of perfume, and the handwriting is obviously that of an adolescent girl.
You haven't bothered to answer, of course.
Oh, yes, I have. I sent a message back by our good landlord that I would glad to see her.
Well, came down here to complete your handbook on bee farming.
Oh, confound it. Those two wretched canaries are getting their sun from the windowsill above us.
Oh, I think it's rather jolly to hear little fellows chirping away up there.
Oh, I find the sound most distracting. Let's go inside.
You know, Holmes, those birds are owned by a charming couple, Mr. and Mrs. Wainwright. I was chatting with them on the stairs this morning.
I'm afraid their charm will escape me as long as their pets continue to tweet in that irritating manner. You've spoken of the peace and quiet of the country inn, Watson, and yet I find that... Come in. Ah, Miss Mary Victor, I presume.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Please come in. Close the door, won't you? Thank you. This is my old friend, Dr. Watson. You may speak quite freely in front of him.
How do you do, Miss Victor?
How do you do, Doctor?
Now, sit down, young lady, and tell me what's troubling you.
Mr. Holmes, I came down here from London to get away from someone, but I've been followed. I've been afraid to leave the inn. Until last night, I felt I couldn't stand being cooped up any longer. So I went for a walk on the seashore. Someone followed me, Mr. Holmes. I ran back here as fast as I could. But now he knows where I live. And I'm frightened. Please help me.
My dear Miss Victor, I'm afraid you must be much more specific before I can help you. Who has followed you down here, and why are you afraid of him?
I'll tell you the whole story. It'll sound strange to you, but I swear it. Oh, there he is again down by the gate. I'm going to my room.
Now. Don't you be frightened, Miss Victor. I'm sure we'll be... Oh, that's all. What sort of thing?
I don't see anyone outside who might have frightened her. There are 2 or 3 fishermen loitering about. Wait a minute. Here's a young fellow walking up the path. Come on, Watson. Out through the French windows again.
Oh, gracious me. Here we go again.
I think we'll take the liberty of accosting him. Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
Are you looking for Miss Mary Victor?
Is she young and pretty?
Yes, sir. She is. Extremely so.
Then I'm looking for her. Where can I find her?
I can see you're being facetious, sir.
Well, there's no harm in that, is there? By the way, who are you,
Being
gentlemen, may I
facetious.
ask?
My name is Holmes, and this is my friend, Dr. Watson.
I'm Basil Carson. You're not Sherlock Holmes, are you?
That is my name.
I thought you seemed familiar. I know your brother, Mycroft.
Oh, indeed. Then I presume you're connected with the Foreign Office.
Yes, I'm in the consular service.
Are you staying at the inn, young man?
For a few days. It's funny that I should run into the great Sherlock Holmes.
Why, may I ask?
I was planning a murder. But with you gentlemen here, I see that I shall have to be very discreet.
Who is your intended victim, may I inquire?
There are 2 of them. The 2 canaries in the room next to mine.
For a moment, I thought that you were really serious.
But I am serious. The wretched creatures are driving me mad.
I quite sympathize with you, sir. I've been thinking of committing a slight case of mayhem on them myself.
We can take one apiece, Mr. Holmes. Well, I'm glad to have met you both. I'll probably see you again. Goodbye.
Goodbye, sir. Goodbye. I don't like that fellow, Holmes. If you ask me, he's the man who's been fighting the poor girl that came to us. His peculiar look on his face when you asked me he was looking for Mary Victor.
Oh, there's only one person who can
My
settle
cat
the
wants
question, and
ice
that's the young
cream.
lady herself. Come on, old fellow. Let's go back
Oh,
indoors.
shh. Here comes Wainwright, the owner of the Canaries. Good evening, Mr. Wainwright.
Good evening, gentlemen.
This is my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I'm honored to meet you, sir.
How do you do, Mr. Wainwright?
Beautiful evening, isn't it? I just took a stroll down to the store to get some more birdseed. By the way, Mr. Holmes, I hope our canaries don't bother you. Little fellows are such a comfort to my wife and me.
Oh, no, not at all, sir. I find their chirruping very soothing.
Oh, I'm so glad. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Wilson.
Not Wilson, Mr. Holmes. Wainwright.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I thought you said Wilson.
Good night.
Not like you to mix up names, Holmes.
I didn't mix them up, old fellow. I never forget a face. Mr. Wainwright is in reality Wilson, the notorious canary trainer, whom I had the pleasure of sending to prison for a 7-year stretch in '95. Some years later, he made one of the most spectacular escapes from prison in the history of crime, and has since managed to evade all efforts to recapture him.
He seems to sweet old fellow.
Well, possibly he's reformed, but I doubt it. Our stage is set for an intriguing problem, old chap, and our cast is an interesting one. A frightened young girl, a diplomat of uncertain integrity, and a noted criminal. Watson, I have a feeling that once again the game is afoot.
The game is afoot.
Holmes, why are we strolling along the pier instead of staying at the inn? I thought you said that you were expecting trouble.
I am, old chap. And I'm sure it'll find us out. You know, Holmes, I'm still completely mystified by the behavior of that girl, Mary Victor. I knocked at her door last evening, again this morning. I couldn't get any answer. The landlord told me that she was not seen at dinner last night, nor at breakfast this morning, and yet her room has not been vacated. Curious. Hello, there's the village constable sunning himself at the end of the pier. Good morning, Sergeant Blake.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson. How are you, gentlemen?
My cat won't bother me for cat food, but she will bother me for ice cream.
I'll think nothing of it, sir. We always arrange that for our really distinguished visitors. By the way, Mr. Holmes, I was reading one of your friend's stories about you last night. The one called The Adventure of Mysteria Lodge.
That was, Wisteria Lodge, you foolish fellow.
Maybe it was. Anyway, I was reading it aloud to me old woman. And if you don't mind my saying so, Mr. Holmes, we both thought you made a bad mistake. Though, of course, you come out all right in the end.
Dear me, Sergeant, I stand reproved.
Excuse me, Sergeant. Holmes, look. Look at that figure standing by itself right at the end of the pier.
Our friend Wilson, the canary trainer.
He's got a revolver.
Here, we don't want any of these going on in Kingside. Here, you. What are you doing waving that revolver about? Keep back the three of you. I'm the law here. Don't you tell me what to do. Keep back, I say. I'm not afraid to fire.
Better do as he says, Sergeant. You don't want to trifle with. Just exactly what are you up to, Wilson?
You've caught up with me once again, Sherlock Holmes. But this time you're not going to send me back to a prison again, and maybe the gallows. If I can't escape you, then I'll take my own way out with this revolver.
Wilson, what in thunder are you talking about?
The murder at the inn last night. I did it. Murder? Confessing in front of the three of you. Or you leave my wife alone. She didn't know anything about it. Now, I hope you're satisfied, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
He's pointing the revolver as he has it.
You fool, stop it!
Strike me pink. He done it. Over the pier and into the sea.
Get help, Sergeant. It's possible he isn't dead.
Right, sir.
Come on, Watson.
We're going back to the inn, I suppose.
Of course we are. We've just heard a murder confession, but we don't know who has been murdered.
Holmes, what was the telegram that you sent off just now?
A message to my brother, Mycroft. The innkeeper informed me that Basil Carter, the young diplomat we met yesterday, left me in rather hurriedly in the early hours of this morning. Come on, let's go upstairs.
Well, we'll have to break the news to Mrs. Wainwright, I suppose.
Before we do that, I think we'll see if Miss Victor's in her room. Which one is it?
Here, top of the stairs.
We'll take the liberty of looking in. Miss Victor hasn't been seen since last night. Uh-huh. Unlocked.
Lord, what a mess. Clothes strewn all over the place. Open the suitcases.
It
Look
looks
at
as if the young lady has been planning an immediate departure.
Where could you be? No one's seen her since last night.
Oh, I beg your pardon, gentlemen. I thought I heard Mary Victor come in. I'm Mrs. Wainwright.
Mrs. Wainwright, I'm afraid we have some rather bad news for you.
Your husband shot himself a quarter of an hour ago at the end of the pier. His body fell into the sea.
Is he dead?
We must presume so, madam. I left the police sergeant there searching for him. Sergeant Blake should be back here any moment now.
So he did. After all.
You don't seem very surprised, madam.
He threatened to do it.
Mrs. Wainwright, before your husband shot himself, he confessed to committing a murder in this inn last night.
A murder? Whose murder?
At the moment, we're not quite sure.
Oh, he must have been out of his mind.
Mrs. Wainwright, I'm afraid I must ask you some rather painful questions. Are you aware that your husband was a criminal, that he served a prison sentence under the name of Wilson?
Yes, I knew that. He told me when we were married 2 years ago. But he said that he'd gone straight ever since he'd come out of prison. That's why he changed his name. He was trying to make a fresh start.
You know no reason for his planning to kill anyone at this inn?
None. And unless you find someone murdered, I wouldn't give too much thought to it.
Yes, if you give my thanks, so, madam. You seem remarkably unmoved by your husband's tragedy.
Why should I pretend? We were very unhappy together. This might be the best way out of this for both of us. My husband came quite a large amount of life insurance. In the event of suicide, would that be payable?
And on a policy, madam, but I must say that from your attitude, I begin to doubt whether your husband is dead.
What do you mean?
I mean that if Mr. Wilson, or if you prefer it, Mr. Wainwright, wished to disappear in spectacular style, what could be simpler than to pretend to shoot himself, drop into the sea? I'm up here, Sergeant. Did you find him?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. We fished him out right away. Dead as a doornail. Shot himself through the head, he did.
Well, that disposes of your last theory, Holmes.
Did you find the revolver, Sergeant?
Yes, ma'am. Got it right here with me. One bullet missing. You found out if anyone here's been murdered, Mr.
I
Holmes?
found out very little as yet. Listen.
I don't hear anything.
Exactly, you hear nothing. Yet we're within a few feet of the Wainwright's room.
What do you mean, Mr. Holmes?
I mean that there is one sound we should be hearing very clearly at the moment. Right, I think of it before. The sound of your canaries chirruping. You've heard little else for days. Come on, Watson.
Where are you going?
Your room, madam. I'm afraid I must dispense with asking your permission.
You're already in my room. It seems a little late even to mention the subject.
Here's the birdcage, the windowsill. Hurry. Where's the gun?
No, old chap. If you look more closely, you'll see them on the bottom of the cage.
Let me open this door and get one of them out. Thank you, Holmes. They're dead.
And yet when we entered the inn a few minutes ago, they were still chirruping.
But who on earth would want to kill a couple of birds?
That, my dear fellow, is one of the things we have to find out. So far, I must admit I'm puzzled. We have a self-confessed murderer, and the nearest thing we can find to a corpse is a pair of dead canaries.
We'll bring you the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second. A second I'll take, if you don't mind, to ask you if you've ever had a glass of Petri California sherry. Because if you haven't, boy, you want to remedy that situation pronto. Try that Petri sherry before dinner some evening. Look at its clear amber color. Smell those luscious grapes. And get a sample of that Petri flavor. That Petri sherry can turn the usual before-dinner lull into a main event. And say, if you like your sherry dry, as I do, wait till you taste Petri Pale Dry Sherry. Is that ever good? But after all, when it's a Petri wine, it's always a good wine. And now, back to tonight's new show adventure. Strange events are taking place in the Kentish fishing village of Kingsgate. A self-confessed murderer has committed suicide, but his victim cannot be found. As we rejoin our story, the great detective and his old friend Dr. Watson are once again examining the room of Mary Victor, one of the missing guests.
You know, Holmes, the murder that Wilson confessed to before he committed suicide might have been the killing of those two canaries.
I think not, old chap. Wilson obviously loved the creatures. He kept them in spite of the fact that they were dangerously apt to identify him with his criminal past. Interesting.
What have you found?
This note lying on Miss Victor's dressing table. Yeah.
Have a look. You think you can hide from me, Mary, but you can't. Wherever I go, I shall follow you. So why not get wise to yourself and stop running away? Sounds as if the poor girl was in danger, all right.
Possibly, but the writer of that note was certainly obliging. Though the letter is unsigned, he at least was a clue to his identity.
Oh, what clue?
The phrase, get wise to yourself, is very un-English. It's American. Come on, old chap.
Well, where are we going now?
The envelope to this letter has the Kingsgate postmark on it. I should be surprised if that fount of all knowledge, the village postmistress, can't help us find an American visitor.
Yes, I know the young man you must be looking for, gentlemen. His name's Walter C. Bunker. He's been in here to send telegrams, and his accent's so strong you could cut it with a knife. It's just like one of the dead Indian fellows you read about, you know.
Can you tell me where he lives, madam?
Well, that I can, sir. He's been rooming at Mrs. Bell's house, 15 Laburnum Grove, down behind the gas works.
15 Laburnum Grove, Mrs. Bell. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very much obliged to you. Mrs. Bell?
Yes, sir. What can I do for the gentleman?
Well, we understand that Mr. Walter Bunker has been staying with you, madam.
Yes, he has. A nice young American gentleman.
Is he at home, may I ask?
No, sir. Nothing worried about him. This morning, when he goes out, he asks me where the nearest cemetery is.
Senator, greeted me. Huh?
I tell him, and then he gives a queer kind of laugh. I'm not sure I'll see you anymore. And then he walks off, and I haven't seen him since. I tell you, I'm worried about him, gentlemen.
And where is the nearest cemetery, Mrs. Bill, the one you directed it to?
About 3 miles from here. Just this side of Branson Wood.
Thank you, madam. Come on, Watson. The cemetery seems deserted. The music comes from the church.
My Lord, it's a funeral.
Or a wedding. Come on.
By Jove, it is a wedding home.
I'm afraid we're on the false trail, but we'd better make sure.
Quiet, gentlemen, please. The ceremony is just ending.
Just one question. Can you tell me the names of the couple who've just been married?
Victor from the inn and the young American by the name of Bunker.
Thank you. Yes, we have been following a false trail, confound it. The frightened young lady was merely frightened by her persistent American fiancé.
Threatening letter that he sent her.
Ambiguously worded, when you come to think of it. Anyway, we can cease to worry about Miss Victor. She is now Mrs. Bunker. I think we can assume that she's out of all danger.
Oh, we've got to start all over again.
No, my dear fellow. The field is narrowing. We'll head back to the inn now, and I have a feeling that we're on the last lap of our strange adventure. Yes, here's another suspect eliminated. The telegram is from my brother Mycroft. I telegraphed him earlier on today to check on the movements of Basil Carter, the young man who left the inn so mysteriously in the early hours of this morning. His answer informs me that the gentleman in question was recalled to the Foreign Office suddenly and arrived quite safely a few hours ago.
Oh, now I'm completely puzzled.
And I, old fellow, at last see daylight.
Wish I did, Mr. Rose.
Sergeant, go upstairs and get the dead man's widow and bring her to my room, please. Then I think I can give you the solution to this problem.
What do you want with me, Mr. Holmes?
Sit down, madam. You and Sergeant Blake are comfortable. Now, in the first place, the murder occurred this morning and not last night.
I know what you're hinting at. The canaries. I admit I killed them. But you can't do anything to me for that.
Why did you kill those birds?
I hated them. As much as my husband loved them. When I knew he was dead, their singing drove me mad. So I killed them.
But they must have been already dead when we told you of your husband's suicide.
No, Watson, but the lady was fully aware that her husband was dead when we informed her of the fact. You see, she murdered him.
You're talking rubbish. Yes, Mr. Holmes. How could she have murdered him? We saw him shoot himself before our eyes.
Because when Wilson raised that revolver to his head, he was convinced that it contained blank cartridges. Unfortunately for him, his wife had deliberately replaced the with live cartridges.
But great heavens, why? How?
Let me reconstruct the case for you. Wilson, with the connivance of his wife here, had contrived a disappearance plot. He knew that I had spotted his real identity, and so he planned this rather dramatic exit. Confessed to a non-existent murder, and then, well, had his plan materialized, he was to shoot himself with a blank. All from the pier, an apparent suicide.
Fantastic scheme, but how did he plan to get away?
Well, he would have swum under the water, safe distance, and so made his escape.
Oh, his plan couldn't work possibly.
No, probably not, not. But at least it was ingenious. He would have destroyed his true identity. And had his revenge on me by making the search for a murder that had never been committed. Unfortunately for him, his wife was his accomplice, and saw in the scheme an excellent way of killing her husband.
You think you're so very clever, Mr. Holmes. But even if it were true, how could you prove it?
Observe this revolver, Mrs. Wilson. It's the one your husband shot himself with.
What can you prove from that?
Ever hear of fingerprint tests?
I've heard of them. But that revolver's been underwater.
True, quite true. But thanks to the researches of my excellent friend, Dr. John Thorndyke, an infallible test has been discovered for recording fingerprints even after immersion in seawater. I applied the test to the prints on the revolver and the bullets and compared them with some that we found on the water glass in your room. They are the same, Mrs. Wilson. Now, does a man let his wife load his suicide weapon, Sergeant Blake? I think it's obvious the time has come for you to take over the case.
All right. So I did change the bullets. I hated him. I'm glad he's dead. What's more, I'd do it again.
Mr. Holmes,
Yes, Sergeant Blake?
Now that I've taken Mrs. Wilson to the station and booked her on a murder charge, I wonder if you'd mind answering a question.
With pleasure.
This fingerprint test. I'd like to know about that. I never heard of being able to take prints after a revolver has been handled 2 or 3 times and soaked in salt water.
Yes, Holmes, and I'd like to know, when you performed the test and took the prints off the glass in our room, I thought that I was with you all the time.
You will, my dear fellow.
Well, then,
I can give you the answer in one word. Bluff.
Huh?
There is no such test, my dear Watson. It would be almost impossible to expect clear prints after so much handling, and totally impossible after submersion. Fortunately for us, though, Mrs. Wilson was gullible enough to believe me and give me a confession.
And there's no such person as Dr. John.
Just last year, in the case of the red thumb mark.
Tell me about that case, Holmes?
No, I didn't. It was deliberate, old chap. With your taste for writing sensational stories, I was afraid you might publish the affair.
Oh, would it have mattered if I had?
Oh, yes, it would. You would have given away, what shall I say, professional secrets. You'd have provided the public, and in particular, the criminal public, with a complete education on fingerprints. And when that happens, my dear Watson, we shall have no tricks left. That will be a sad day for detectives.
And now I'm sure our good friend Dr. Watson is ready for us. Let's go in and join him.
Come in.
Oh, there you are, Mr. Bartell.
Good evening, Doctor. Are you all ready with the nice new Sherlock Holmes adventure?
I'm ready if you are, my boy. How would you like to hear a story that took place in Italy?
42 minutes is all it took.
You and the great Sherlock Holmes certainly did get around. What took you there, Doctor?
We'd gone to Rome to investigate the death of Cardinal Tosca. An inquiry, which I may tell you, Mr. Bartell, was carried out by Holmes at the express desire of His Holiness the Pope.
Say, Doctor, that sounds like a wonderful...
No, Mr. Bartell, that's a story that I'm afraid I can never tell you. However, tonight's event took place a few days after Holmes had brought his case to a satisfactory, though somewhat terrifying conclusion. I suggested to the great man that a short holiday would be good for us before return to England. So we spent some happy days browsing among the architectural treasures of old Rome. The Colosseum, the Baths of Caracalla, the Forum, the wonderful ruins on the Palatine Hill. I couldn't drag Holmes away from them, Mr. Bartell. And at night time he was able to indulge to his heart's content his great love of music. Finally, it was 2 nights before we were to sail for England, I remember. We went to the opera house to hear the famous Italian soprano Gina Valchesi singing Verdi's immortal La Traviata. I can hear that exquisite voice now, Mr. Bartell, as Holmes and I, seated in a box, listened spellbound to the great Valchesi singing her last act aria.
The worst music ever.
What a voice, Watson. What a magnificent voice.
Yes, it is, Holmes. A pity, though, that most opera stars who sing like nightingales seem to have the figures of unusually well-fed pouter pigeons. Poor woman, she must weigh at least 20 stone.
Nevertheless, you mustn't refer to her as poor, my dear chap, despite her somewhat unfortunate proportions. Signora Gilda Valchesi remains one of the greatest and wealthiest of contemporary sopranos.
Listen to the applause.
Yes, I'm glad she'll sing an encore. We might as well go back to her dressing room now. The opera's almost over.
Why are we going back to the dressing room?
Because during the last exhibition, I received a note from her requesting my attendance.
Oh, what did the note say?
Well, it seems that the lady is not too popular with certain members of the opera company. Well, I've no wish to become entangled in any opera clash of temperaments. I confess I find myself not at all interested in meeting the lady. Shh. She's going to sing an encore.
Really going back to her dressing room?
Certainly, my dear fellow. A summons from Gina Valchesi is no more to be disobeyed than a royal command.
I must ask you gentlemen not to stand outside La Valchesi's dressing room. We permit no strangers, particularly foreigners.
The Signora has requested our presence. May I ask who you are?
Permit me to introduce myself, gentlemen. I am Armando Bellini, Inspector of Police.
My name is Holmes, Sherlock Holmes, and this is my friend, Dr. Watson.
Sherlock Holmes. This is a great honor. Allow me to apologize. Here in the Opera House, we have to be so careful, you understand, of intrigues. There are so many. Senor Holmes and his friend. I am so happy to meet you both. At headquarters, I hear wonderful reports of your work in the Cardinal Tosca affair.
I should prefer not to mention that unfortunate matter, Inspector, except under conditions of extreme privacy.
Oh, quite so. And behind the scenes of the opera is not the most secluded place. Please to forgive me. You are waiting to see La Marchese?
Yes.
She is still on the stage. She has requested your presence, you say, Senor Holmes?
Yes, I trust the meeting is to be a social and not a professional one. We're sailing for England in a couple of days.
And you came to hear the great Marchese sing before you left. Most understandable.
A magnificent voice, Inspector.
Yes, Doctor. And still, well, I am a devout opera lover myself. Yet, those who can add a youth and beauty to a great voice.
That's true. True, Senor. But where can you find such a combination?
I have found it. Here in the opera, there is a girl. She is my protege. Someday, I hope she will be my wife. At the moment, she is only understudying La Marchese. If she should ever get the opportunity of singing in her place, then a new star will be born.
Oh, really? What's her name?
Lisa Bordoni. She has but recently come to Rome from Milano, where she was studied with the great Alfieri. Confidentially, I think that La Marchese is so jealous of her that... here is Lisa now. And there is her brother with her. Lisa, cara mia, please to join us.
By George, what a beautiful girl.
What is it, Armando?
Permit me to present the famous English detective, Senor Sherlock Holmes, and his friend, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
How do you do, young lady?
Glad to meet you both. This is my brother, Wally.
How do you do?
I certainly feel that I know a lot about you two gentlemen. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've read your stories, Dr. Watson. Indeed, sir. I'm very flattered.
Lisa, cara mia, we were just saying that in youth and beauty, combined with the voice, lies our future hope in the opera. Your day will come. It will come soon.
I hope you're right, Armando. As long as I understudy Gina Valchese, I don't see when I'll get my chance. She's disgustingly healthy.
If you're about my saying so, young lady, though your name is Bordoni, you and your brother don't sound in the least Italian.
Well, we're not, Mr. Holmes. We're American. But to succeed in Italian opera, my sister has found that an Italian name is essential. So the Borden family became the Bordonis.
In any case, my real name is Lizzie Borden. I'm sure you, Mr. Holmes, as a famous detective, will see that I had to change my name.
Yes, I can well understand.
Who was Lizzie Borden?
Well, my dear fellow, one of the greatest and most successful of murderers. I've often regretted that I was in Tibet instead of America for that particular case.
Senor Holmes, I do not understand you Anglo-Saxons. To me, a murderess is a murderess. Now, when you speak of a greatness in women, I feel... Oh, but here comes Gina Marchese now. I will introduce you.
How many times must I tell you allowed no one to stand outside my dressing room? Send them away. La Marchese is tired.
But you wish to see Senor Sherlock Holmes, the famous detective. Here's a copy of your request. Please, permit me to present him, and also his friend, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Senor?
I'm really honored to meet you, Senora Marchese. And now perhaps if we may come into your dressing room and confer privately.
Perfecto. What would La Marchese have to say to a detective? I mean, you're not the police. As Vero. Go away, all of you.
Well, what do you think of that? She slammed the door in my face. Waiter.
Si, senor.
Bring me some more coffee, please.
Si, senor.
The very pleasant dining on the Hotel Terrace, I must confess.
Very. Amazingly warm, considering yesterday's snow.
Yes, it is. Later, I suggest we pay another visit to the opera and hear about cases sing Gilda and Rigoletto.
On my soul, Holmes, it seems to me that you're astonishingly casual after the way that woman insulted you last night, slamming the door in your face as if you were a tradesman. Shock.
What would you have me do, my dear chap? Force my way into a room, demand an apology, or have my friend challenge her to a duel in order to avenge my honor?
Oh, don't try to be funny, Holmes. You know perfectly well what I mean. The lady asks you to come and see her, and when you do, she's never heard of you.
And here it is nearly 24 hours later, and you've done absolutely nothing about it.
Oh, dear old Watson. You're really quite upset over the affair, aren't you? Well, if it'll make you any happier, let me tell you, I have done something about it.
I'm delighted to hear it. What?
This morning, I was able to obtain a specimen of La Marchese's handwriting from an autographed picture in the possession of Inspector Bellini. I compared the writing with that on the note that I received in the box last night. It was the same, proving that the message I received was authentic.
Oh, in that case, why did she snub you like that?
Well, something was to frighten her, I suppose. Something or someone who was standing at the dressing room door with us.
Well, who was there? Inspector Bellini, Lisa Bordoni, and her brother.
Precisely, my dear fellow. Therefore, we may assume that La Marchese had no wish to recognize me in their presence.
But if you think that holds, why haven't you been in touch with her today? She may be in some dreadful danger.
If she is, she can find me easily enough. Meanwhile, I'm perfectly happy to be left alone. The last few weeks have been sufficiently strenuous without becoming involved in some fresh case.
My soul, Holmes, you must be tired. I've never known you to be so indifferent to a case. Great Scott. Talking to what? Signora Marchese herself.
Oh, and judging from the lady's expression, she seems to be in some distress. Good evening, Signora.
Signor Holmes, I must speak
Please
to
sit
you.
down, won't you? This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
First, I must apologize for my behavior last night. It would have been dangerous if La Marchese had acknowledged that she had to communicate with you.
That's just what my friend assumed, madam.
Please speak quite freely. No one can overhear us.
Signor Holmes, I am being persecuted. My life is in danger. You must save me.
We're threatened.
See, Signor. Today, tragedy has struck. My sister, my beloved Bella, lies near death from a murderous attack. An attack that was meant for me.
Good Lord, what happened, madam?
If you will please to keep quiet, a little La Marchese speak will I learn what happened.
Why, I'm so sorry, madam.
This morning, I always myself take my dog for a walk. But this morning, I felt a trace of a cold. I asked my sister to take the dog for a walk. Please do understand that my sister is very much like me in appearance.
I understand, Signora. Please continue.
She walked alone in the park. From nowhere, a horseman come galloping right her down. This much I learned from the traces in the snow when I worry and go to find her.
Was she able to tell you who the horseman was?
No, she cannot speak, senor. They say at the hospital that her skull is fractured, that she may not live. Senor Holmes, that attack, it was meant for me. You must protect me.
Signora, I shall do everything in my power to...
No!
What's wrong, madam?
Somewhere there is a cat. I know it. Make it go away. I cannot stand cats. They drive me mad. No. Oh, make it go away, please. I cannot sense them without even saying them.
Run away, sure.
No.
I can't see one.
It must be your imagination.
Mira, I am sorry to make such a scene, but I cannot bear to be near a cat. I cannot tell you what it do to me. It may sound foolish, weak.
No, not at all, Signora. Such a condition is quite common. In fact, I believe medical science has given it a name. It's known as ailurophobia.
Whatever it is called, it make me ill. I must go to my room. I cannot stand much more. My poor sister.
I imagine with your sister at death's door, Signora, you will not sing tonight.
Senor Holmes, I love her very much. But even a sister is only a sister. My art is my life. In an hour, Senor, I sing Gilda in a Rigoletto. You will attend the performance. And afterward, you will tell La Marchese how she may trap this devil who seek to destroy her.
Holmes, it's after 9:30. We've missed quite a lot of the opera. It's hardly worth going to our box now.
Just be in time to hear La Marchese sing the incomparable Caro Nome. Well, old fellow, we've been as quietly as we can.
Seems to me we should have been in our box from the beginning of the performance. She had an eye on her.
That's true, old chap. But it occurred to me that an attack on her during the performance was unlikely, and that our time might be more profitably spent making inquiries at the Riding Academy.
You drew a blank. Found no trace of that mysterious rider.
No, but at least we tried. Here we are. Let's stand at the back of the theater for a few minutes. Great Scott. That's Marquise. It's the understudy. Lady's protege, the American girl, Lisa Bordoni. What a beautiful girl. Nice one, but with a beautiful, wonderful range. Look here, we've no time now. We must go to the Marchese's dressing room at once. We know she left for the theater tonight with the intention of singing. I'm very much afraid there's devil's work afoot, Watson. Why on earth doesn't she answer? Shh. Listen. There are cats inside our dressing room. Come on, Watson. Locked. Put your shoulder to it. Come on, help me. Watson, come on. Once more. Come on, again. Now, Watson, here. Great Scott, she's unconscious, Watson. See what we can do for her. She must have fainted the fight. Yes, some fiend, knowing her deadly fear of cats, has locked her in here with half a dozen of them. Her eyes are opening, Holmes. She's coming to. Signora Marchese. Marchese, tell me, who did this to you? Great heavens, her voice is gone. Many vicious crimes in my lifetime, Watson, but to murder a voice that was one of the treasures of the world, is as vile a killing as I've ever encountered.
Dr. Watson will tell you the rest of his story in just a few seconds. And right now would be a wonderful time to try a glass of Petri California port. In the evening after dinner, well, any time you're taking things easy, is the perfect time for Petri port. Petri port is a rich red wine, the kind of wine you like to sip slow, so you won't miss a drop of its truly fine flavor. I'm not kidding when I say you owe it to yourself and your family to try Petri port. In fact, you should try Petri port and Petri Muscatel. So don't buy one, buy two. Muscatel. Just be sure you get Petri, because Petri wine is always good wine. Dr. Watson saw the great opera singer lost her voice when someone locked her in a room full of cats. Huh? What did you and Sherlock Holmes do? We took Signor Marchese back to her hotel at once, so that she was properly taken care of. How did the understudy, Lisa Bordoni, make out, Doctor?
The tragedy that overtook Lord Marchese gave her a great chance. She received a tremendous ovation at the close of the performance, and it seemed certain that another star had been born. But let me tell you the story just as it happened, Mr. Bartel. A little later that night, Holmes and I were once again standing on the balcony of our hotel, watching a crowd of people that had assembled in the court. You see that crowd, Watson? Yes, I suppose they've come here to acclaim the new star.
Oh, no, my dear fellow. The crowd is planning a celebration. Look at them. Listen, they're angry, murmuring. I'm afraid there's going to be trouble. I don't like the look of it.
Here comes Lisa Bordoni's brother, Wally.
What's wrong, sir?
Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes, you've got to do something. What's happened? Well, somehow the story about the cats and Marvel Casey's dress. The crowd outside are saying that my sister Lisa planned the whole thing so that she could sing Val Casey's part in the opera tonight.
Where's your sister now?
In a room at the hotel here. I managed to get her away from the crowd and I locked her in. With that mob, I'm frightened.
Here comes the official representative of law and order, Inspector Bellini. Wally, where is Lisa?
I was just telling Mr. Holmes that I'd locked her in a room.
That crowd's in a dangerous mood, Bellini. What precautions are you taking?
I have thrown a cordon of police around the hotel. The mob is getting out of our hand, and Lisa must be protected. As a matter of fact, the situation is even worse than the crowd knows. Casey's twin sister Bella died in the hospital tonight. That's a murder charge. If the crowd knew about that, I'd tremble to think what might happen.
Did you see that, Dr. Casey's sister was a twin, Inspector?
Si, Senor Holmes. She was her exact double in everything but voice.
Indeed, how very illuminating. If you don't mind, I'd like to make you words in private. My friend Dr. Watson, excuses for a moment, please.
What do you make of it, Holmes?
What do you, old chap?
Well, the American girl seemed very charming and all that. She might have done it. It had to be
Tell you what, since we still got just a little bit of time, this live stream is going on for a little over an hour now. Boy, I am tired. My voice is cracking. Oh, my cats are lacking. Lacking dreams.
Get me a cat. Cat? What a fool. You'll find out soon enough.
Don't be any kind, but hurry.
My back's a little sensitive. That prince has got to be on this one.
Come on, Kitty. Kitty, come on, Kitty. There's a good Kitty. Here. What you do in the hotel kitchen, senor? Oh, you want to play with my cat? Oh, is he your cat? Charming little girl. I'd like to borrow him for a little while. Oh, why you want to borrow my cat? Why, I thought I'd take him up to my hotel room and have a little game with him. I've got some old socks he can play with. Deal. The English, they are a crazy race. My cat does not like to play with the old socks. Look here. Here's 50 lira for you. No. I tell you, my cat does not like to play with old socks. My cat would stay here, and you can keep your money. I give you 100 lira. So that you may stuff my cat full of old socks? No. Give me back my cat. Oh, the place is with you. You'll get it back later. Stop me. The crazy Englishman is stealing my cat.
Whoa, my back is messed up. Whoa.
Well, I've got the cat for you, Holmes, but I wish you'd tell me what we're doing outside Balcase's door with it. I'm going to try an experiment. You open her bedroom door softly. So. Slip the cat in. So. And close the door. Holmes. Man, what the blazes you think you're doing? Don't drive her mad. I think not. Listen. Watch through the keyhole if you can. Holmes, her voice. It's come back.
Yes, I thought it might.
I can see her through the keyhole. She's picking the cat up by the scruff of its neck. She's walking toward the balcony.
Yes, and towards the crouch down below. An excellent opportunity for a public confession. Come on. Come on.
What do you want?
I charge you with the murder of your sister, the great singer, Balcase.
7 minutes till that Princeton. That's gonna be sweet.
It was a magnificent, Senor Holmes. Why you force her to confess on the balcony in a full sight of man? And so you saved Lisa.
In the full
I can't
side of the
thank you
mouth
enough,
with
Mr.
the
Holmes.
cat
No,
in
can
hand.
Though I still don't see how you guessed. She looks so much like her sister that she fooled even me, her understudy.
Yes, it was an extremely cunning plot, Miss Bordone. The real Balcase sent me that note last night. When I met her at the dressing room door, she denied having sent for me because the three of you were there.
I suppose she suspected one of us.
Oh, yes, obviously. And later, no doubt, she told her twin sister Bella about having sent me the message and also announced her intention of coming to see me. Bella saw her opportunity, murdered La Balcase, assumed her identity, and to give added realism to her role, followed through with her sister's plan by coming to see me today.
But I still don't understand this business, Mr. Holmes. Why did the twin sister lock herself in her dressing room and fill it with cats? What did it accomplish?
It gave me the chance to sing.
Yes, that's true. Which is why Watson felt certain the criminal must be you, your brother, or Signor Bellini. But you see, the episode with the cats accomplished one other thing. It made it plausible that the great Balcase should never sing again. To whose advantage would that be? An impostor, of course.
The person of a twin sister who could not sing and who must surely envy her sister.
It became more than a possibility. Became probability, but it had to be tested. That's why I sent for the cat, Watson. When the sister, thinking herself unobserved, exhibited no terror for cats, well, it became a certainty.
This is as fantastic a plot as ever we've met.
A diabolical plan, Watson. And I'm only thankful, Miss Bordone, that we were able to expose it before the crowd reached you tonight.
I don't know what I can ever do to repay you, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, that won't be hard, my dear. A box of Covent Garden for your London debut would be, an ample repayment. And from what I hear of your reception in Rigoletto tonight, I shan't have to wait very long for that reward, eh?
It's a promise, Mr. Holmes.
Come in.
Oh, excuse me, please. All over the hotel are looking for my cat. I say to myself,
Where's my cat?
he's stealing my cat. Inspector Bellino, you arrest him. He tried to bribe him and he ran away with the cat and fill him full of old English songs. Oh, the ship be on.
Doctor,
I'd sure like to have a picture of you running away with that fella's cat under your arm. You a cat stealer.
It's not a bit funny, Mr. Bartell. Believe me, it was most embarrassing.
I know. But it was all for a good cause, and I think you were splendid about the whole thing. Incidentally, how'd you happen to look for a cat in the hotel kitchen?
Oh, there's usually one round the back door of the kitchen. Haven't you ever wandered, backstage in a hotel? Fascinating.
Oh, of course I have, but I've never been in a hotel kitchen.
Then where were you?
In the wine cellar.
I should have known.
Yes, Doctor, I like to look at bottles of Petri wine because when I see a Petri wine, I know I'm looking at a good wine.
All right, we've got a few minutes left, and I'm probably going to let that drip for just a moment. So let's just take 10 minutes, see if we can't make a nice clip here
Generations ago. Since
in
then,
15,
winemaking
20
has
minutes.
been their heritage, handed on down from father to son. So you can take it for granted that the Petri family really knows how to turn luscious, sun-ripened grapes into clear, fragrant, delicious wine. And you can take it for granted, too, that the name Petri on a bottle of wine is more than a trademark. It's a personal assurance of the Petri family that every drop of wine in that bottle is good wine. You just can't go wrong with Petri wine because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Watson, what story are you planning to tell us next week?
Next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you a strange adventure that Holmes and I had many, many years ago. It concerns a young girl, the mutilation of her doll, and the tragedy that overtook a certain wise woman from the mountains.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure was written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in this Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of Black Peter. Music is by Dean Fossler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And tonight,
Yeah, this is a bit
Dr.
oversized at
Watson
first,
was
but
played by
just
Mr.
give us a
Eric
minute and
Snow,
we'll work it out.
who substituted for Mr. Nigel Bruce. Mr. Bruce is scheduled to return to the program next week. The Petri Wine Company, Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station.
Ooh, the Prince done.
Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. And now I'm sure our good friend Dr. Watson's ready for us. Let's go in and join him. Good evening, Dr. Watson. Well, it seemed very chipper tonight, Doctor. Have they been getting into any more trouble lately?
No, my boy, it's been a relatively quiet week for them. One meeting with a dead seal, visits to my neighbor's chickens, and a losing battle today with a cross-eyed Siamese cat.
Call that a quiet week.
Just for them, but
So
never
funny.
mind about the dogs. Drop your usual chair and make yourself comfortable. Just in time for share.
That would be very nice, Doctor. Oh, I see you have the orders, Doctor.
Yes, my boy. As the story I'm going to tell you tonight took place in 1887, I thought I'd better refresh my memory on some of the details of the case. Shortly after my marriage, and as I bought a practice in the Paddington district, I saw very little of my old friend Sherlock Holmes. Distinct struggle. Dr. Farquhar, from whom I bought the practice, had at one time an excellent clientele, but his age, combined with a fortunate affliction, neither that resembles St. Vitus's dance, had very much thinned it. I had confidence, however, in my youth and in my energy. I was convinced in a very few years the practice would be as flourishing as ever. But, as I said, I saw very little of Holmes in those days.
I guess you were too busy to visit Baker Street, huh, Doctor?
Here you guessed quite correctly, Mr. Bartell, quite correctly. Holmes seldom went anywhere himself save on professional business. You can imagine my surprise, therefore, when one day on coming home from a heavy day's work, I found that Holmes had decided to pay us a visit. My wife persuaded him to stay to dinner, and as the three of us sat at the table, the flickering candlelight dancing strange patterns on the walls, made it quite like old times. Holmes was in an unusually gay mood, and I can remember the twinkle in his eye. He turned to my wife. Said,
Mrs. Watson, he's an unexpected guest on the late night out. I'm extremely grateful. Mrs. Hudson's cooking, though excellent of its kind, lacks variety. Your dinner has been quite a treat.
That's a very gracious little speech, Mr. Holmes.
I've never known you to be so observant about food.
Perhaps the lack of your company, my dear chap, and the consequent lonely meals has made me conscious of Mrs. Hudson's culinary shortcomings.
I suppose you're taking John off with you tonight on one of your cases.
No, Mrs. Watson. No, I can understand your suspicions. My visit was purely social.
Yeah, let's go into the other room and have a pint, shall we?
Well, don't you think you'd be more comfortable at the club?
So, Mary, if you want to get rid of us.
No, dear, it's not that.
Your visitor is due at any moment, and you had counted on the house being empty by now.
Why, how on earth did you know that, Mr. Holmes?
Past hours you've been glancing at the clock with mounting anxiety. I feel sure that if it had not been for my unexpected visit, your good husband would already have been walking towards his club.
Yeah, it is my custom to go to the club on Thursdays, but how'd you know?
I know your hands, my dear chap, as well, if not better than you do. It's a good thing I'm a bachelor, isn't it, Mrs. Watson?
Yes, indeed. Your wife will keep no secrets from you, Mr. Holmes, I'm sure.
Well, Mary, dear, who is your visitor, and what is the secret that you...
Innocent enough, John. As Thursdays is the mate's night out, and you've been going to the club, I've been letting Alicia Wentworth meet a young man here. We'll meet a chaperone, of course.
That's the mystery.
Well, Watson, yeah, Bobby's on the wing, and I'm sure we're dreadfully in the way. Let's stroll to Baker Street, shall we?
Of course, I'll get my coat. Why didn't you tell me, man?
Well, I was afraid you might be angry, John.
Angry, of course, man.
Alicia's such a sweet girl. And Harry Prendergast is a very charming young man. He comes from an excellent family, has a commission in the infantry, and the children are tremendously in love. But her beastly guardian forbids them to meet. So I... Oh, there she is now.
Oh, we can pretend that we were just leaving anyway.
Yes, I'll get my coat.
Hello, Alicia, dear. Oh, Mrs. Watson, I'm so glad to see you. Alicia, this is my husband, and this is Sherlock Holmes.
How do you do, my dear? It's a shame that we have to go now, but my friend and I have some very important business to attend to.
Oh, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the detective, aren't you?
Yes, Miss Whitman.
Please don't go, Mr. Holmes. Please don't. I need help so bad. What's wrong?
Go to the drawing room, shall we?
What's troubling you, Miss Whitman?
It's Harry, Captain Prendergast. I don't know exactly what's the matter, but something dreadful has happened to him.
Oh, now sit down here beside me, dear.
Miss Wentworth, what reason do you have to suppose that Captain Prendergast is...
I'm not 100% sure how I want this to clip in there yet. I know I want the ends to be involved.
And just now I went to his club.
I,
Prendergast was not a member, but he is a member. He's been a member for years. What has happened to him?
So I want the ends to be straight, these to be clipped. Okay, is that fair?
See, I went to my guardian, but he wouldn't let me go to the police. He said that he is scared.
Prendergast is a fine family. Where is your
I think we can do that
brother?
fairly easily. I think just might be just dreaming.
Sounds like a positive ogre to me. Who is your guardian, my dear?
Colonel Moran. Colonel Sebastian Moran.
Indeed. He's a man who has many entries against him in my ledgers, but a
Where
man
am
who
I?
I've never met. I have long hoped to cross...
What am I looking at?
But how could Uncle Sebastian have anything to do with the criminal profession, Mr. Holmes? He's the son of Sir August Moran. He was once British minister to Britain. Oh, you must be confusing him with someone else.
No, my dear, it's the same man, and furthermore, I'm almost certain that your guardian is the right-hand man of a certain friend of mine, whose name also begins with the three letters M-O-R.
Good Lord, I ask you.
Moriarty.
And yet I suspect that Colonel Moran is the second most dangerous man in London.
That's Harry. It must be her.
Well, I do hope you get Mr. Holmes.
I shall do my best, Mr.
Well,
Watson.
if that is our young man at the door, it's more than likely our problem doesn't exist any
I hope
longer.
you're right, Watson. Though with Colonel Moran as a guardian, I'm afraid the young lady is destined to have trouble.
Come on, Harry.
Good evening, Mrs. Watson.
I'm so glad to see you, Harry. This is my husband,
How do you do, Doctor?
How do you do, my boy?
Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
How do you do, Captain Prendergast? How do you do, sir?
Harry, what's wrong? I can tell by your face that something dreadful has happened.
It has, darling.
Tell Mr. Holmes about it. He's promised to help us.
Well, sir, I'm afraid this is a little outside of your province.
You
Whoa,
will find
whoa,
that my friend's
whoa,
province is
whoa.
quite extensive, Captain Prendergast.
I'm more than happy to do anything I can to help, sir. That's very nice of you, Mr. Holmes. Well, it's pretty bad. Last night I was accused of cheating at cards at the tank of the club fleet.
What the
Of course, I
what?
don't have to tell you that I didn't cheat.
dead against me. I've been winning heavily, and the cards were proved to be marked. Marked? How? There were pinpricks on the edges. Pinpricks which indicated the card's value. How did the pack of cards come into play? That's the devil of it. I myself broke open a sealed pack given to me by the club porter. And I swear that was the pack that was later found to be marked.
Was everyone searched?
Yes. But they found a new unopened pack in my pocket. The obvious implication being that you had substituted the marked cards, of course.
I can see what happened. Somebody deliberately tried to incriminate you by dropping the new pack in your pocket.
Of course, darling. But what I can't understand is how the marked pack was introduced into the game.
Was there any other cards found in the room?
None, Doctor.
The Tankerville, eh? Colonel Moran is a member of the club, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Uncle Sebastian uses it all the time.
He was present at the game last night.
Oh, Harry, now we're worse off than ever. If he thinks you cheated his cards, he'll never let us get married.
Now, don't worry, Olivia. I'm sure that Mr. Holmes can find a way out of it.
I'm afraid it will be too late. I couldn't marry you now, Alicia.
What do you mean, Harry?
They forced me to resign from the club. That's a bad enough disgrace. But I know there's worse to come. You see, I was expecting my promotion to major any day.
I think I'm going the wrong way with
It would be
this.
pitiful if I'm not cashiered from the regiment. What kind of a life can I offer you?
Harry, you're talking absolute nonsense.
I think, Captain Prendergast, the next step is obvious. We must remove this apparent stain on your character. But how? Miss Wentworth can stay here with Mrs. Watson. The doctor and I will drive over in a cab with you to the club and see what can be done.
What kind of a card game were you playing last night, Prendergast?
Stud poker. Ever since the American ambassador introduced it into it's been quite a favorite.
The first game for marked cards, which requires no elaborate dexterity in the dealing, but the knowledge of your opponent's pool card. How many of you were playing?
Half a dozen of us.
You were winning heavily, you said?
Yes, Doctor. Though one of the others, a fellow named David Harkness, was doing well. Now I come to think of it, Harkness almost seemed to know when I was bluffing, as though he could see the marked card.
Well, perhaps he was the one who marked it.
It's possible. And yet certainly no one could accuse him of tricky dealing.
He was so clumsy with his bandaged finger, eh?
How did you know he had a bandaged finger?
Now, I'll tell you that, Captain Prendergast, when you tell me what's really on your mind. There's a great deal more at stake than a card scans, isn't there?
Yes, there is. I didn't dare to tell Alicia about it. You see, I'm fighting a duel tomorrow.
Duel? Lord, with whom?
Colonel Moran. He insulted me last night. He goaded me beyond a man's patience. He taunted me until I couldn't stand it any longer. And so I challenged him.
And in so doing, gave him the choice of weapon.
Yes, Mr. Harkness. Of course, he chose revolvers.
Moran was a big game hunter of note. He was reputed to be the best shot in England.
I'm probably the worst in London. If only I could shoot as well as I can box. I'm regimental champion.
Revolvers. Good heavens, man, revolvers. A duel with Moran is suicide for you.
No, it's not suicide. Thank you, Stuff.
Jack, Cabby, keep the change, will you?
Blimey. Thank you, Governor.
Suicide. No, it's not suicide. It's a terribly late plan for murder. Pray heaven that we're not too late to avert it.
That's unfortunate.
Mr. Harkness that you Watson said? Yes, he went to his room half an hour ago. Number 108. Up the main stairs and down the corridor.
Thank you. I want you to follow us for precisely 1 minute and bring a sealed pack of the club's playing cards to Mr. Harkness' room. You understand?
Oh, yes, sir. And thank you.
What even is that? How did that even happen?
Did you make the arrangement?
Yes, come on. Let's go to Harkness' room.
That came from the M-lock
Since I came in here,
subtraction.
a humiliating experience for patients, Captain Prendergast, and I'm sure you're
Oh, man.
I wish I knew what you were up to.
Scientific stage drama was presented in this pub last night. The only difference being
How?
that my production of a cast was a little different. Here we are.
Step file.
Now let me do the talking.
This makes sense.
Yes? You want something? Prendergast, I don't want you in my rooms. I don't know why they allowed you inside the club.
There's in Mr. Harkness.
Bring your letters in, Harkness. Oh, all right. Come in.
Thank you for your hospitality.
hospitality, sir. You fellows will tell me what the devil you think you're up to. With pleasure. As you very well know, Mr. Harkness, this is probably Captain Prendergast's last day on Earth. He has one request to make of you, that you join him in a farewell game of poker with us, so you bear no grudges. Oh, it's fantastic. You're insane. Oh, by the way, Mr. Harkness, I'm delighted to notice that your sore finger seems to have healed with great rapidity. By an odd coincidence, you'll observe that I seem to have injured mine.
Mr. Holmes, when you do that?
Oh, in the carriage just now, a mere scratch. Fortunately, I had some first aid materials in my greatcoat. Come in. Yes, Taylor, what is it?
Begging your pardon, Mr. Harkness, but the gentleman asked me to bring
That bothers me.
cards here.
Put them on the table, Taylor.
Very good, sir.
So,
Well, what's the game? It's about poker, Mr. Harris. A game with which you're quite familiar, I understand. And the stakes? A man's honor. Possibly another man's freedom. Open the pack, Mr. Harkness, and deal us a hand. I should think this might be a very unusual game.
The rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a few seconds. Time for me to explain that Petri California Sherry is not only an ideal wine to serve before dinner, but it's also the perfect wine for almost any occasion. Petri Sherry is fine after dinner when you're listening to the radio or just sitting around talking. And, of course, you couldn't ask for a finer party wine than Petri Sherry, especially if your party is at cocktail time. If you don't know what wine to buy, you can't go wrong with Petri Sherry. But be sure it's Petri. Look for the letters P-E-T-R-I. They spell the proudest name in the history of American wine. Dr. Watson, that was quite a game of poker you were settling down to. I have a feeling that Sherlock Holmes had an ace or two up his sleeve, didn't he?
Figuratively, he did, Mr. Bartell, though at the time I must confess that, as usual, I was pretty much in the dark. David Harkness opened the new sealed pack of cards, and the four of us played a hand of poker. It was easy to see that our unwilling host was far from happy. His ferrety eyes darted from one to the other of us as he played our cards. He knew that he was the victim of a conspiracy, and so he was watching every move we made. Finally, as that strange game progressed, Captain Prendergast leaned across the table and said, "I think you're bluffing, Harkness."
Do you? Well, it'll cost you exactly the limit. Find out. How curious are you?
By Joe, I think you are bluffing, Harkness. I'll see you.
To be a fool to Watson when he has a straight flush.
What do you mean, Holmes?
My dear Harkness, the markings are quite apparent, I assure you, to someone who knows what he's looking for.
But you mean that these cards are marked too?
Examine them for yourself, old chap.
They are marked. They're pinpricked just like they were last night. That's impossible. Harkness broke the seal of the new pack just now. We all saw him do it. He couldn't have switched the pack.
And why would I do that, even if I could? I wouldn't try and cheat Mr. Sherlock Holmes, would I? No, Mr. Harkness. I just wanted you to know that I understood the trick.
What trick, Mr. Holmes?
The same one that was played on you last night, Captain Prendergast. This was a demonstration of how easily a sealed pack of cards may be turned into a marked one by a man with a sore finger.
What has a sore finger got to do with it, Holmes?
Oh, it's very simple, Watson. A pinhead or a thumbtack hidden under the bandage, a tiny pressure against a card one wishes to mark as it comes into one's hand, and after several deals, hey, presto, a marked pack.
Oh, so that's how it was done.
Holmes, you can't prove a thing. You weren't here last night. Oh, unfortunately, I wasn't, Mr. Harkness. Otherwise, I should have the great pleasure of exposing your trick at the time. As it is, I should have to rely on a public confession.
You'll never get a confession from
Possibly not, but I'm sure that you're interested to know that I've made quite an extensive study of card sharping. In fact, I considered giving a little lecture or demonstration here at the club.
What are you talking about?
This game that we've just played was in the nature of a rehearsal. I should, of course, stress this particular method as being of great local interest. I'm sure most of the gambling members will recall one man who has had unusually bad luck with his fingers.
Holmes,
You're trying to ruin me.
well, you were willing to see Prendergast ruined.
And killed. But a pistol duel with Colonel Moran is almost equivalent.
this is the point where I'm going to go
From the direction
center.
of your glance, Mr. Harkness, I'm certain that you keep a loaded revolver in your desk drawer. That's a very poor solution, I assure you. Not be a man. Write a confession and sign it. It'll free Captain Prendergast from any stigma, and it'll help to trap the real culprit, Colonel Sebastian Moran.
Moran, where does he come into the picture, Holmes?
Mr. Harkness knows, don't you?
Well, I think I know now.
Why don't you tell us, Harkness?
One thing at a time, Prendergast. I owe it to you to write a confession. I'll do that. Rather than face a public exposure in the club, but that's as far as I'll go. If you have any ideas about Moran, go and talk to him yourselves. There's a certain honor, you know, even among thieves.
Thank you for the implication, Mr. Harkness. You have writing materials here?
Yes, I have writing materials.
Splendid. Then while you're telling the truth about last night's episode, we'll call on Colonel Sebastian Moran. Have you any idea where we might find him at this time of night?
Yes, I have every idea. You'll find him in the gun room. Thinks he has a duel on his hands tomorrow.
In the gun room, eh? Thank you, Mr. Harkness. We'll go and talk to him. You may expect us back within half an hour.
Who are you fellows? Turn the gas up, can't you?
Colonel Moran, this is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
Colonel Moran, I've been wanting to meet you.
Sherlock Holmes. I've heard a lot about you.
And I have you, Colonel.
Harry, what are you doing inside the club?
Mr. Holmes brought me back. We've just left David Harkness's room. He's writing a confession that he engineered the swindle last night, that he deliberately tried to involve me.
So, in that case, I suppose I need oil this revolver no longer. Harkness is a cheat. Dear me, how shocking.
Aren't you glad that my name will be cleared in this business?
Of course I am. I'm delighted.
And you'll apologize for the things that you said last night?
Yes, Harry, I'll apologize. But you must realize that this revelation makes no difference to my feelings about your marriage to Alicia. On my soul, Colonel Moran, it seems to me that one Watson, I think the name is. Watson, yes, my name's Watson. Dr. Watson, I would suggest that the happiness of my ward is a matter that cannot possibly concern you. Now, look here, sir, I don't want to go...
Old chap. Colonel Moran, I think I may be able to change your mind on the question of your ward's marriage.
How very interesting. And what may...
And Captain Prendergast's murder?
What is the son talking about?
You know, sir, that a revolver duel with you is no duel. It's a cold-blooded killing.
Rubbish. I was challenged. Therefore, I had the choice of weapons. Naturally, I chose the weapon with which I was most familiar.
And you had the choice for a very good reason, Colonel Moran. You forced Prendergast into a duel because it was the only way you could be certain that he'd never marry your ward.
Alicia? What do you know about her? More than you think, sir. She's at my wife's house this very minute.
You of jealousy. I think it's far more likely that the financial aspect of guardianship is involved here. A financial accounting is due upon her marriage, isn't it?
That's none of your business.
An accounting is due, Mr. Holmes. Alicia told me that herself.
Exactly, and the accounts were in no state to undergo scrutiny. The answer is obvious. David Harkness, a card sharp, was in need of money. You induced him to practice his cheating last night in order that you could trap.
Harkness, what the devil do you... You fool!
I don't care about my own disgrace, but you're going to pay for your share in it, Moran.
Drop that revolver! Don't you see that you're... Moran, you shot him! You saw that it was in self-defense, gentlemen. He was waving a loaded revolver at me. It's most unfortunate, but it was in self-defense.
Yes, self-defense that removed the one dangerous witness who could have testified against you. You did, Watson, isn't he?
Shot right through the heart.
Moran, you're a cold-blooded, murdering devil.
I demand satisfaction for that insult. These gentlemen are my witnesses. I apologize for the misunderstanding last night, but this is a different matter. You've insulted me, Harry.
The duel will take place, Colonel Moran, and Dr. Watson and myself will act as seconds for Captain Prendergast. Let's make the necessary arrangements, shall we?
Miss Watson? Dear? It's 2 o'clock. What can have happened to them? Late.
Well, if you'd been married to John for any length of time, my dear, you wouldn't worry. When your husband goes out with Sherlock Holmes, you're prepared not to see him for a few days.
Mrs. Watson, what are you saying? I haven't got a husband.
Oh, now, Alicia, don't glower at me like that. What did you say the time was?
It's just after 2, and they left here at 8. What can have happened?
Well, I don't know. But Mr. Holmes was with them. So don't worry, my dear. He's frightfully clever. I wouldn't be surprised.
There's the front door now. They're back.
Oh, dear me. Now I'll have to make cocoa.
Harry, darling, what's happened?
Oh, lots of things, darling. I'm a member of the Tankerville Club again. I'll probably become a major, and you'll certainly become Mrs. Prendergast before very long.
Oh, it all sounds wonderful. What have you two been up to?
Oh, it's the old story, Mary dear. Holmes solved the case, and it all ended happily.
Happily, my dear Watson. That's hardly the word to use. Harkness is dead, and Colonel Moran is probably in hospital.
Please, tell me what happened.
But your guardian challenged Captain Prendergast to a duel. Look, the fact that since he was the challenger, the choice of weapons belonged to his opponent.
Bet you can guess what that choice was. Boxing gloves.
We've just come from the gymnasium at the club, Alicia. I'm afraid I really gave him a thrashing.
And a well-deserved one, too. I'm sorry that I couldn't put him where he belongs, behind prison bars.
Oh, Harry.
He'll be the laughing stock of London.
I'm glad of it.
But that means that you'll never consent to our being married.
I disagree, Miss Wentworth. If we keep his secret, and we've hinted that we might, I'm quite certain that he'll withdraw his objections to the marriage, and somehow he'll make up his deficiencies in his guardianship account.
Probably by borrowing money from Professor Moriarty.
Oh, I think it's all wonderful. But it's well after 2 o'clock in the morning. Let's eat, shall we? I'll make some cocoa.
Cocoa, hot whiskey.
Harry, you and Alicia stay here. You probably have some plans to make.
Cocoa's not really...
Shush, John.
Oh, sorry, no.
As soon as the cocoa's ready, we'll call you.
Well, Doctor, that was some story. You know, I'm glad the age of dueling is over. I'd hate to have someone challenge me to a duel.
What's the matter, Mr. Bartell? Are you afraid of being hurt?
Afraid of being hurt? Of course not. If someone challenges me to a duel, I have the right to choose the weapons, don't I?
Yes, and what weapons would you choose?
Green puffs at 30 paces. Nobody's going to hurt me.
see that.
Although, come to think of it, instead of cream puffs, I'd rather have a piece of cake.
Oh, why a piece of cake?
Because it tastes so good with a glass of Petri sherry. Any questions?
No questions.
For a while there, I'll bet you thought I'd forgotten all about
Oh, I've forgotten about it. Not you, Mr. Bartell.
No, not anybody who's ever tasted it. Petri wine is the kind of wine you'll always remember. That's because the Petri family really knows how to make good wine. They've been making wine for generations. Winemaking is their heritage. It's an art that's been handed on down in the Petri family from father to son, from father to son. Every drop of Petri wine is clear, fragrant, and delicious. Remember, the name Petri on a bottle of wine is more than a trademark. It's the personal assurance of the Petri family that their wine is the kind of wine you like, for any occasion. You can't mess with Petri wine because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Well, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes story are you planning to tell us next week?
Well, now, let me see. Next week, Mr. Bartell, I can tell you an adventure that took place in the gay Vienna of the 90s. It concerns a strange tragedy that occurred on a ballroom floor and a weird series of murders that were punctuated by the sound of music. I call the story The
Didn't we pick up? I think we already listened to that.
And now I know our good friend Dr. Watson's expecting us. Let's go in and join him.
Come in.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell.
Say, how are you feeling, Doctor? All over that attack of flu you had?
I'm feeling very much better, thank you, my boy. I'm still a little weak. We old fossils take much longer to get over that sort of thing than you young fellas.
Well, you take good care of yourself, Doctor. You've got a lot of friends, you know.
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you, Mr. Bartell. And now settle yourself down, and I'll get on with tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure.
Where did it take place?
You may not be familiar with the names of Jersey, Guernsey, Alderney, and Sark, but those are the 4 principal islands that make up the group known as the Channel Islands.
Oh, yes, Doctor, I have heard of them. They're somewhere in the English Channel, aren't they? Between the southern coast of England and the northern coast of France?
That's quite right, my boy, though I very much doubt if you ever heard of the tiny island on which this story happened. It was the island of Garth, a minute but self-contained spot with a population of just under 1,000 inhabitants, subsisting, and from what I saw of the island in those days, subsisting very well on its dairy products.
Was it under the rule of the British government, Doctor?
No, Mr. Martell, not exactly. You see, the island belonged to a family by the name of Horn. The head of the family, who was known as the Seigneur of Garth, was an independent ruler owing nominal allegiance to the King of England. That allegiance was expressed by one of those traditional ceremonies in which the Seigneur annually presented 1 pound of freshly churned butter to a representative of the British Crown.
Times haven't changed, have they, Doctor? Pound of butter is still worth a king's ransom. But tell me, what were you and the great Sherlock Holmes doing on the island of Garth?
Just coming to that, my boy. If you'll give me a minute. It was in the summer of 1896 when, to my utter Holmes informed me that we were going to the island of Garth as the official representatives of the British Crown to accept the annual presentation of butter. At the time, I must confess, I couldn't see why Holmes wanted to accept such a ridiculous mission. It was only as we approached the island in a small fishing boat that he told me a great deal more was at stake than a pound of butter. Unfortunately, Mr. Buck, I'm afraid I wasn't a very intelligent man.
Cheer up, Watson. We'll soon be there.
I hope so. I feel. I must say the whole trip seemed utterly ridiculous to me. Plunging and bobbing about in a little boat in a raging torrent just because somebody wants to give somebody else a pound of butter.
Dear old Watson, you don't really think our mission is so innocuous, do you?
Then why are we going to the island of
We're
Garth?
going to the island of Garth at the express wish of its present ruler, Martha Horn.
Mother Horn? I never heard of
She's
it.
an extremely spirited old lady, and the only woman who dared tell a certain resident of Windsor Castle that she looked devilishly dowdy for an empress.
Great Scott, you mean that
I mean, Watson, that Martha Horn's behests are not lightly disregarded. Obviously, she wishes to see me urgently. Also, my brother Mycroft put pressure on me. He reminded me that a visit to Garth might be closely allied to this emerald tie-pin I wear. Unless you recall the origin of this pin.
Well, naturally, that lady at Windsor Castle gave it to you after our little trouble last year over those stolen plans for the Bruce Partington submarine.
Exactly, my dear fellow. But remember that the spy Oberstein had put those plans up for auction in all the naval centers of Europe. Some hint of their nature must have leaked out. It's even possible that other powers may be able by now to duplicate the pride of our submarine fleet. And whoever controls the channel, Watson, controls England.
Oh, they're dropping anchor, yet we're still a quarter mile out from the island. Why do you think they're doing that?
Here comes the skipper. He'll tell
Here is as close to the island as we may approach, monsieur.
Thank you.
A smaller boat. Good Lord. Holmes, you were hinting at the naval significance of the island of Garth.
Yes, whatever I was.
Well, what good would it be as a port if even a small boat like this can only come within half a mile of it?
For a service vessel, no. But we've been of submarines. Garth, I learned from the encyclopedia, boasts a magnificent interior cavern accessible only through underwater channels.
Great Scott, an ideal natural harbor and dry dock for a submarine fleet.
Precisely. And on the control of the island of Garth, Watson may well rest the fate of the British Isles. Now, old chap, perhaps you see why Mycroft was so anxious for us to collect a pound of butter.
Doesn't it seem wonderful to be on land again? First the fishing smack, and then that wretched little rowing boat. Then the bucket swinging us up the face of the cliff. Now at last I can stretch my legs and...
Steady, old chap, steady, steady. Let me give you a hand. You'll soon get your land legs back here.
Thank you. I'm a bit shaky, I must confess. Hello? Who's that couple walking towards us?
Welcoming committee, no doubt. How do you do?
Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Permit me to present myself. I am Dr. Hugo Obermann.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do, Doctor?
And this is Mrs. Reeves, the housekeeper at Horn Castle, where you will be staying.
How do you do?
How do you do, Mrs.
Welcome to the island of Garth, gentlemen.
You are deputed to come and greet you and take you back to the castle. You can walk there across the cliff tops. It isn't very far.
Splendid. I think my friend will appreciate traveling on terra firma once again.
Dear me, Herr Doctor, you are not a good sailor, perhaps?
Well, perhaps about it, sir. I had a miserable crossing.
I am sorry to hear it. I trust your short stay at the castle will be some recompense for the journey.
The formal presentation of the butter will take place tonight. There will be no reason why you gentlemen cannot return to the mainland tomorrow.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Reeves, but it's more than likely that we shall stay on for a few days.
Oh, it will be quite unnecessary.
I'm afraid that is a matter for Mrs. Horn and ourselves to decide.
I'm afraid that Mrs. Horn is incapable of making any further decisions.
Oh, what do you mean, madam?
Obviously, you have not heard, but the news is slowly reaching the mainland. Mrs. Horn died yesterday.
Died? Good Lord. Natural death, I suppose.
But of course,
I attended her myself. A simple case of heart failure.
the poor lady died in her sleep.
Shall we begin our walk to the castle?
By Jove, Holmes, this changes things. You suppose it was a natural death?
I suppose nothing, old fellow. But in almost 20 years of practice, I can recall precisely 3 clients, actual or potential, who died natural deaths. Come on, let's follow them.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, this is Mr. Christopher Horn, grandson of Mrs. Horn and the new ruler of Garth.
Hello.
sir.
Very nice of you fellows to come. You had to arrive just before old gal kicked the bucket, though.
Allow me to offer my condolences on your grandmother's death, sir.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Horn.
Thank you. It was a ghastly business. I found her, you know.
Christopher,
Frightful sight. There was an awful silly grin on old dear's face, and
don't you think it would be more to the point if you were to explain ceremony in connection with tonight's presentation?
You're right, Reeve. Reeve is a terrible tyrant, but she's efficient. Don't know what I'd do without her. Always ran everything for poor old Granny. Why, when the old girl was ill, she...
Christopher, I gave you a schedule of the ceremonies this morning. What did you do with it?
Dashed Reeve, I don't know. Must have lost it.
And I have my own copy in the study.
I swear I don't know what I'd do without you.
Excuse us a moment, gentlemen.
I'll be back, Mitchell.
Holmes, what in thunder's going on here? That boy's completely under the thumb of Mrs. Reeves. He was trying to tell us something, but that frightful woman kept changing the subject.
He spoke of an awful, silly grin on the dead woman's face. Didn't that suggest something to you?
By Jove, that's one of the characteristic symptoms of strychnine poisoning.
Exactly, old fellow. Not to mention the equally characteristic arching of the body. We've got to get Mr. Horn to ourselves for a little while. You've got to examine the body of the dead woman. But it's going to be difficult. Is there a balcony outside the window? Yes, it is. Come along. Let's see what it leads to.
The balcony seems to lead right round this particular wing of the castle. Must have served as a lookout in the olden days. I wish the balcony were a little wider. Must be a sheer drop of a couple of 100 feet down to the rocks below.
Yeah. Hello. These must be the windows of the room adjoining the one we just came out of. Let's go a little closer, shall we? We may be able to find out something.
Can you see anything?
Yes. They're in there. Mrs. Reeves and the boy. Now's our opportunity. I'll tap on the window.
You see this? It's coming.
What are you two doing out there? Admiring the view?
Yes, my boy, it's quite beautiful.
Mr. Horn,
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
I was great admirer of your grandmother. I was interested in what you were telling me of her death. She had a grin on her face, you said.
Yes, it was awful. Her body hunched up like a croquet hook. Of
Really?
course, Dr. Oberwald said it was perfectly all right, but I must say it seemed dashed on to me.
It was far from all right, I assure you.
And you started to say something else. What was it? Let me see. You said when she was ill.
Oh, yes, that was a silly business. When she was ill, she thought she was in danger from poisoning, so she made Mrs. Reeves taste all her food and drink.
Did she really? Where is your grandmother's body now?
In the West Wing. The funeral's to be tomorrow morning.
I see. Where did Mrs. Reeves go?
I'm here on the balcony behind you, gentlemen, listening to your conversation with the greatest interest. Christopher, let me warn you, these men are the emissaries of the British government who influence you against me, against Reevy, who has looked after you since you were born, and who tries to protect you now that your grandmother has gone and you are alone.
Yes, I know, Reeve, but after all...
That is your pride as the head of the Horn family, the Seigneur of Garth. The Garth that I am trying to save for you. This man is completely unscrupulous. He was about to accuse me of murder. Weren't you, Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
The thought had occurred to me, Mrs. Reeves.
Of course it had. Because you wished to poison Christopher's mind against me. Well, Mr. Holmes, we have no police on the island of Garth. Our only law is the word of the Seigneur, and Christopher now holds that title. Seigneur
What do you say? Will you allow an Englishman to blind you by accusing me of being a murderess?
Mr. Holmes? Dr. Watson? I shall meet you at the ceremony tonight. Beyond that, I don't care to speak to you again. Good day.
A shame to spoil your plans, isn't it, Mr. Holmes?
Well, on the soul.
Magnificent, Watson. Magnificent. A murderess who seeks to defeat me by accusing herself. Superb. It's a new game, my dear fellow, and one that must be played to a finish.
We'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second, so I'm just going to remind you that right now is one time you'd really enjoy a glass of Petri California Port. You couldn't ask for a more delicious wine. Petri Port, with its deep, rich red color and its heart of the grape flavor, is one of America's all-time favorite wines. Petri Port is wonderful after dinner and perfect to serve when company comes. Try it. But just remember that when you want the kind of port I'm talking about, you've got to make sure it's Petri, because all Petri wines are good wines. Dr. Watson, this is certainly an unusual story you're telling us tonight. Sherlock Holmes standing on the balcony.
At lunch. Though the great man said little, I could see that he was excited, that his keen brain was evolving some plan that would enable us to solve the mystery of Mrs. Horn's death. After lunch, he started to descend the stairs in the hall of Garth Castle. As we did so, Holmes said,
We're in no danger ourselves. Mrs. Reeves knows that we are here as emissaries of the British government.
yes, if we didn't return with the butter in a few days, there'd be a British dreadnought here looking for us.
However, I am in danger of one of my worst defeats. My professional pride is piqued. If only I can... Watson?
Yes, sir?
If at any time today I slip you a note, don't read it at once, but... Here comes Mrs. Reeves. Precisely, Watson. I entirely agree. If I do not make the test on Mrs. Horn's body within 24 hours, it will be useless. I must make it by 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Mr. Holmes,
Oh, yes, Mrs. Reeves.
I want to apologize for my behavior before lunch. I was intolerably
Oh,
rude.
please.
Whatever my quarrels may be with British politics, I at least owe to both of you the duties of
That's
hospitality.
very gracious of you, Mrs. Reeves. I wonder, would your hospitality also include a personally conducted tour of the subterranean caverns for which this island has become internationally famous?
Would they really interest
Oh,
you?
I'm afraid that my friend and I won't have the
Oh,
time.
yeah, not at all, Watson, not at all. We have plenty of time. As long as we're back here by 3 o'clock.
I'm sure Dr. Overwald would be delighted to join us. He has made quite a study of the unique rock formation.
Oh, that's splendid. It should prove a most interesting excursion.
But Holmes, why do we want to go stomping around a lot of damp and smelly cake?
Only exercise will do us good, old fellow. Will you lead the way, Mrs. Reeves? And please remember that it's most important that I return
I
here.
remember, Mr. Holmes. You must be back here by 3 o'clock. A little further, Mr. Holmes, and we shall reach the giant cavern.
Most interesting. Watson and Dr. Overwald seem to have lagged behind us somewhat.
They will be here in a moment. There. This is the giant cavern.
Magnificent. Truly a miracle of nature. It's a natural submarine dry dock hewn out of the rocks.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. And in the old days, only the smugglers who inhabited this island knew the entrance that leads to this cave. Garth found a cache of untold wealth in here. Soups, jewels. There are still the remains of some of the finest Calvados brandy stored among these rocks.
An incomparable drink.
Would you care for some? It is our custom whenever visitors honor us with their presence to offer them a
I
glass.
should be delighted.
There's a natural shelf here in the loft. There you are, Mr. Holmes. And here is a glass.
This is a rare privilege. I imagine that very few people have been offered it.
Only our most distinguished visitors, I assure you.
This cavern is completely inaccessible from the outer sea, I presume.
Completely. Unless, of course, ships could swim under the sea.
Which, as you know as well as I, they can, Mrs. Reeves, even outside the imaginings of Jules Verne.
Indeed. Care to explore a little deeper? The others will be with us soon.
I think that's just perfect right there.
Dr. Overveld, the others seem to be some way ahead of us.
Yes, they do, don't they, Doctor?
Holmes? Holmes, where are you?
Dear me, I'm afraid we cannot follow them.
Huh? What do you mean?
The next cabin is already cut off by the rising tide.
What you mean that they're cut off?
I am afraid so. But do not worry, Doctor. In a few hours, the tide will recede. They are in no danger. Just, shall I say, temporarily marooned.
I can't understand it. I'm getting confoundedly sleepy.
I'm so sorry. I'm afraid that we stayed here longer than I intended. I fear that we are cut off by the tides.
Cut off? The tide.
We're in no danger. In a few hours, we should be able to return. But I'm afraid I cannot get you back at 3 o'clock, which was the time I promised.
But it's vital. Absolutely vital that I can get back. And so, sleepy. But please keep talking. I mustn't keep awake.
Dr. Overveld, I must get to Sherlock Holmes at once.
I am sorry, Doctor, but we are not able to control the forces of nature. We cannot force the water to recede. Your friend is in no danger.
No, but he's got a most important test he must make by 3 o'clock.
I am afraid that will be impossible.
I've got to do something. I should have come to these blasted trips in the first place. I don't know what I ought to do. By Jove, that note that Holmes gave me, he told me to open it. Where did I put it? Ah, here it is.
Note for Mr. Sherlock Holmes, eh?
Vital that you make medical test. Great Scott, Dr. Overall, it's absolutely necessary for me to return to the castle at once.
Indeed. A note for Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and now it is most important that you return to the castle. No, my fine English friend. I am afraid I cannot allow you to.
I don't know how you propose to stop me, sir.
You see this revolver?
And do you see this stick?
I warn you, Herr Doctor.
Oh, no, you don't. I'm sorry you can't hear me, Dr. Overveld, but when Sherlock Holmes gives me orders, I carry them out.
Mrs. Reeves, are we still trapped on the tide? What time is it?
5 o'clock. I'm afraid that you'll be a trifle late for your important appointment. What a pity.
You deliberately dragged me here. You dragged the brandy and kept me a prisoner.
Did I? Now, why should I act, Mr. Holmes?
Because you're greedy for power. That's obvious in your domination of that pleasant, though weak young man who is now Senor of Garth. I'm sure your beliefs would find support in certain ideologies now arising in Germany. Your choice of a German doctor as an accomplice in your plans would support that theory.
And what might my plans be?
I should say that you're determined to give Garth as a submarine base to Germany. With this island in their power, they could control the channel.
And I suppose, as well as being a spy, Mrs. Horn's murder?
You and Dr. Overveld between you, she was too strong for you. You had to get her out of the way. You probably made subtle attempts on her life at first, the origin of which you did not realize, but which caused her eventually to send for me. My arrival forced your hand, and so you and Dr. Overveld resorted to the quite unsubtle expedient of poisoning her.
All pure supposition, Mr. Holmes. The only law on this island is Christopher Horn. Do you suppose he'll be...
Mrs. Reeves, I walked into your
Then in that case, you may collect your pound of butter tonight and to the mainland tomorrow.
Mrs. Reeves, how much longer do we have to wait for the tide before we can make our way back to the castle?
We can leave now. We could have left at any time. There's another secret entrance that is above the tide level. I merely had to make you overstay the hour of your test. I could not risk Christopher's seeing definite proof. Come now. I shall lead you back.
Holmes, where have you been all this time?
My dear Watson, did you open the note?
Yes?
Followed my instructions?
Yes, it was, as you suspected.
Thank heaven, old chap. Then now we... Ah, shh. Here she comes.
I'm glad to see, gentlemen, the ceremony of presenting the butter tray. As soon as Christopher arrives, we will explain our customs in this matter. Mr. Watson, I trust that Herr Oberwald proved an interesting companion on your excursion this afternoon.
Yes, indeed, most interesting. We had a discussion of the relative merits of the walking stick versus the revolver. I think I was able to make my argument very convincing.
Where is Dr. Oberwald now?
I imagine he's lying down. He had all the symptoms of impending headache when I saw him last.
Why are you smiling, Mr. Holmes?
I'm afraid, Mrs. Reeves, the job plans have misfired rather badly. As soon as Mr. Horn arrives, I expect you will be under arrest for murder and high treason.
Christopher would never believe you.
Wouldn't I? Mrs. Reeves, you poisoned my grandmother.
Christopher, what lies have these men been telling you?
You're the one that's been telling me lies. I believed you when you said you'd been tasting the old lady's food. When Dr. Watson showed me the results of his test this afternoon, it was as clear as daylight.
But the tests could prove nothing after 24 hours had passed. You said so yourself, Mr. Holmes.
A deliberate lie, Mrs. Reeves. I'm afraid that I invented that mythical 24-hour test. I knew as soon as I mentioned it, you would attempt to prevent my carrying it out. So I was delighted when you thought that you were Shanghaiing me, whereas in reality, I'm Shanghaiing you. My job is to prove your guilt to the senor. With your dominant presence away from the household, it was easy for Dr. Watson to make his test.
You devil. You knew all the
Well,
time.
of course I did. But I had to deceive you. I'm glad my evidence was sufficiently convincing. By the way, Mrs. Reeves, the drug brandy was dreadfully clumsy.
You didn't drink it, Holmes?
Well, of course I didn't. But it was very unflattering to me that Mrs. Reeves thought I might.
Mrs. Reeves, you realize what this means, don't you? I'm going to ask these gentlemen to take you and Dr. Oberwald back to the mainland with them tomorrow.
And stand trial in a British court? Never. I was born on the island of Gar. I have lived here all my life, and I should die here.
What are you up to? Stop her! She's going out on the balcony.
One day, Gar will belong to Germany. One day. Bye, you meddling fool. Goodbye.
Great Scott, she's gone. Must be a couple of 100 feet from the rocks below.
What a dreadful thing. I still can't believe she was a murderess and a traitor. Now, it's shocking.
A shabby finish to a shabby business. Mr. Horn, I suggest that we make sure Dr. Oberwald does not escape justice, and that we then perform the ritual presentation of the butter.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. The island of Garth will still pay tribute to England, and I think it always will. Well, Doctor, that was some story. So Germany didn't get the island of Garth after all.
No, Mr. Bartell. In fact, in after years, the island proved to be an invaluable submarine base for England.
Say, what about the pound of butter? Did Holmes get it?
Oh, yes. But why are you so interested in the butter?
Are you kidding? In our house, butter is our second most favorite topic of conversation.
Your second most favorite. Well, what's your favorite topic of conversation?
Remember, you asked me. Petri wine.
Oh, if I didn't know.
Doctor, that Petri wine is something to really talk about. You know, the Petri family has been making wine for generations. Why, the art of making fine wine is their heritage.
All right, I think that is a great addition right there.
Believe me, when it comes to turning luscious, sun-ripened California grapes into fragrant, delicious wine, the Petri family really knows
Look
how.
at what we did today.
And they're
We
proud of
made
their wine,
that.
too. That's why the name Petri on a bottle of wine really means something. It's the personal assurance of the Petri family that every drop of that wine is good wine. It ought to be.
Is it going to come out? I don't know how we're going to get them off.
To bring you good wine.
That one we can peel off. This one, I don't know how they're going to pop out. We'll have to reach through and pop them out somehow.
Next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you a story
Or tear
that
'em
took
off.
place on the Sussex
But-
Downs many years ago. It concerns a young girl, a painter in watercolors, and a very wise old lady. I call it The Adventure of the Living Doll.
And now let's look in on our genial friend and good host, Dr. Watson. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell.
Okay, I feel good about it.
As usual,
It's
Never keep the
6:25 in the
doctor waiting, I
morning.
always say.
The
Particularly
sun's going to
Dr.
come
Watson.
up.
draw up a chair, my boy.
Thank you.
That's it.
I think it's time
Ready to tell us the Sherlock
that you
Holmes adventure of
guys
the speckled band, Doctor?
Yes, I'm
get out of
already
here.
in, Mr. Bartell.
Much love.
Say, Doctor, just what does a speckled band mean?
You wait till I've told you the story.
4 hours live
Sorry. The floor is all
today
yours, Doctor.
on
Adventure of the
2/3/25.
speckled band began on a rainy April morning
4
in
hours of live
1883.
streaming already by
One of my patients had kept me up most of the night before, and in consequence, I came down to my breakfast rather later than usual.
we will pick up with the speckled band in Sherlock Holmes probably sometime later this afternoon. Until then, I will see you when I see you, seeing me, seeing you. All right, peace. Deuces. Love you.